What up? What up? Welcome back to the Sports Business Take Podcast, your home for sports industry news with a little personality. I'm Paul Hine. He is Zach Creekmore. How you doing today, Zach?
I'm doing good, Paul. How are you doing today, brother?
Dude, I'm good. It's just been a weird week here at St. Joe's. I mean, we had 2 days of classes in the last 10 days because we had Easter break. We were off because we had a long weekend since we're a Catholic school. And we come back class Tuesday, Wednesday, and then massive storm Thursday. Classes canceled Thursday, Friday. No power the entire day Thursday, which was very strange. That's probably why, honestly, that we didn't end up recording earlier. It's almost been 2 weeks since we put out our last episode. So yeah, it's weird because like we haven't had a ton of class time that we've been doing, but like the scheduling just didn't work out super well. Obviously, you spent the whole week studying for your GMATs. How did that go yesterday?
Not a bad first attempt. I did really, really well in the qualitative assessment. Quantitatively, I need to get my math back to being strong, but not a bad first go. I'll go again in a couple of months, and we'll see where it takes me.
When was the last time you took a math class?
The last time I took an actual math class was high school because I don't count stats as actual math.
Okay, fair enough.
I love statistics, but it was way too easy.
Fair enough. Yeah, that was what I was having a hard time with. I took pre-calc last semester, and I hadn't taken math class in 2 years. And my senior year of high school, I took stats, so I hadn't taken like an actual math class in 3+ years. And I was like, so hopefully, when I go to UMass, I'll have to take calculus. Hopefully, I can survive that.
Oh, you will. TI-84 is the savior of all things. They have me doing exponential equations without a calculator, and that's the problem. Right?
Oh, yeah,
if I had
that's
the TI-84,
tough.
it would have been fine. But without the TI-84...
They don't give you a calculator? That's so weird.
No. It was
that's
really
weird.
It was very frustrating.
Yeah, that's stupid. So you just had to do it all out by hand?
Yep.
Yeah, that's dumb. If I ever have to take the GMATs, I'm going to have to prepare then because I can't do math by hand right now. So
no, gotta get the... And I haven't done math by hand since 7th grade.
Yeah, right. That's the thing is you're always taught to use a calculator.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I'll do a lot of studying. I'll get a math tutor or two. So we'll see how
it's funny because you're a peer tutor. Even tutors need tutoring. Proving that you can always be learning more. I know you would have been my peer tutor if I need help this semester. You're going to be my peer tutor, which is kind of funny.
It is funny.
But do you want to introduce our first topic for the day?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't been following the world of soccer over the last international break, we had this huge news come out regarding Nike overthrowing Adidas for the kit deal of German soccer, or the DFB, which is the German soccer national team, right?
What does that stand for again?
DFB. I honestly don't know. I think it's something in German, and I can't pronounce it. But it is effectively the German national soccer organization.
Is D like Deutsch?
Yeah, I think it's the Deutschland Football Organization.
Okay.
But I'm just not positive on that fact. So don't put me there. But it is the DFB. Effectively, the DFB runs and operates all of German soccer from the youth teams all the way through and up into what is their professional international team, kind of similar to how the U.S. soccer, USF runs, the U.S. Soccer Federation. So if you are following that and have a little bit of knowledge in that, well, welcome to this world. It's exciting, and this is a huge new piece of news, right? So Nike will become the official kit sponsor of German soccer starting in 2027. The Adidas contract runs out after the 2026 World Cup played in the U.S., which should be exciting. I'm excited to see the last couple of kits they have to put out. The deal will go through till 2034, but really the big deal here is it's the end of a partnership between Adidas and German soccer that has lasted more than 7 decades, right? We talk about community, we talk about long-term partnerships, and the power.
It's part of German culture.
It's part of German culture, right? And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And it's just huge to see because, this is part of German identity. And Paul, I'm curious to see your thoughts as to what this means, and maybe what this means and what this might be comparable to in American sport too.
All right. Well, okay. Can I answer your question by asking a question?
Yes.
Do you think the deal was more about money, or do you think it was a quality issue?
That's a
Because
hard
you would know more about like the kit quality than I would.
and this is hard to say. And for me, right, I have loved the work that Adidas has done the past 2 years. Right, I posted on LinkedIn. It was earlier this week or last week.
I saw, yeah.
Right, I really love what Adidas is doing in 2024. I think I've posted them 4 or 5 times on my LinkedIn. And if
A
you're not
lot
following me
recently,
on
yeah, I've
LinkedIn,
noticed it.
if you're not following me on LinkedIn, you should be following me on LinkedIn.
Both of us, for real. Get
Um,
those connections up.
little plug. There's a lot of cool stuff, but in terms of the progressive planning, when you're in a partnership for so long and you know what the person likes and you do something for such a long period of time, it becomes stagnant and maybe you get resistant to change. And I think a lot of what German football is experiencing right now with this is a resistance to change. And it's exciting for Nike based on what we read in the article, and we can go in that in a second. Of really, Nike brought a really interesting package forward, talking about the women's development of women's soccer, talking about the development and investment into the youth system, which is huge, and really developing that and bringing Germany to the forefront of that, which is definitely super unique and something that I believe Adidas would have brought to the table too. But maybe it's worded differently in a way that doesn't communicate. It's like, well, we've done this for 70 years. We just want to keep doing the same thing rather than,
Right.
oh, well, we haven't worked with
Like
you before. Here's
like if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of deal.
exactly. So it
Versus
becomes
coming up with new innovation.
exactly. So it becomes something of this is the stagnant cultural classic of what Adidas does and what Adidas offers. And for them, without a Nike deal coming in and a Nike interest coming in, the renewable contract, they're not going to come up to you with a new idea. They're going
Yeah,
to say, hey,
right.
we want to keep this good thing that we have going.
They weren't
Well,
super
Nike,
worried about it, maybe. Well, no,
right,
that's not what I'm saying. Not that they're not worried about it, but maybe they trust that they're going to have that deal, so they're not um, maybe trying to be as innovative as Nike is in trying. They're hungry for the deal, right? I think that piece that you mentioned in the development of the women's game and the development of the youth game is a crucial part of the deal, because not only does it cement Nike in the German professional soccer, it cements Nike in all of German soccer culture. So throughout every level, right? And that is a huge deal when you're talking about brand awareness and talking about sales and stuff like that. The more people that can see your product and be involved with your product, the more people are going to buy your product, right? So them investing in German soccer, football, or I keep saying soccer. I should say football because it's European. Um, German football culture, that is going to directly lead to more sales for them, I believe. And I think
absolutely.
that's a smart way for a sports apparel company like this to present itself as a sponsor to a team. Something you asked me what a comparable for American sports would be. I think maybe in kind of the opposite direction. Jerseys in the MLB just switched over to being made by Fanatics this year, which has been kind of a big issue so far because the quality of the jerseys has not been as good in many people's eyes as it was fully under Nike, when Nike was in charge of the production of the jerseys fully. For like I believe the last 6 years ish, Nike had been in charge of the full production. I think it was like 2017 they took over. So now that Fanatics has the jersey production, you can see through a lot of the uniforms. Like in media days, you can see through a lot of the jerseys. You can see through a lot of the pants, and it's drawing a lot of criticism in like from the public, and even from some players are saying like, we love the material because it's lightweight, but we don't want people to be able to see through it, and that's a huge issue. And the letters on the back of the jersey look completely different. So when we're talking about, this is why I asked you why it was if it was a quality issue or not, because that's where my mind went, was when they switched over to Fanatics for the MLB, the jersey quality has, in most people's eyes, gone down. So I wonder if the jersey quality will go up from Nike or go down, or how it will affect it. And I thought that was relevant just in the whole thought process of it. I think I don't know what your opinion of the Adidas jerseys are, but I think Nike saying we're going to invest a lot of money into this, I think the jerseys will be good. I don't think they'll have a problem with the quality, because they are making a big investment into it to the tune of, I believe it was $100 million,
Yes,
which is a big sponsorship deal. That's a
it's
really big
huge.
deal. Um, but then also investing the money in developing the infrastructure like we just talked about, I don't think the quality is going to be an issue. But yeah, I think that's the closest or most recent American sponsored deal that I can compare it to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're definitely right, right? When you go from one place to another, the quality control is definitely a concern. And if any company has experienced quality control issues, it wouldn't be Nike or Adidas. You'd be looking more at something like a Puma or a
Yeah,
Castore in recent years. Not to take a dig at Puma because I love Puma. I think they've done a lot of really high quality work. Another German based company, so I'm surprised they didn't try to go for this deal in the same way that Nike
yeah,
did. But thinking about it, it's like, well, you're going from one giant to the next, right? It's not there's
yeah.
not this huge major shift. But I will say the quality of Adidas jerseys, from what I've seen in the last 2, 3, 4 years, especially with their investment into the women's game and the women's development with the Women's World Cup jerseys they did last year, that was super unique. Um, I really think that Adidas is producing some of the highest quality work right now. And switching
Okay,
from and that's again, that's my opinion, right? I see their work and I think it's immensely of high quality in comparison to a Nike, which right now is trying to meet that level, but Adidas is definitely setting the industry standard in it, in my opinion, in terms of quality, how it looks, what it communicates, in terms of just pure visuals and feel, right?
right.
If you were to like they built the Women's World Cup jersey collection, and this is a total beeline off topic, whatever, but it is kind of contextual. Um, they went and they built a jersey for the Sweden national team that was based off of a part of an ocean and icebergs that was from Sweden, right? They went and took natural landscaping and said, this is what is part of Sweden, and this is something that is bigger than just what we're looking at here overall. Um, so I think Adidas have done a really good job of growing that, and I think Nike is really trying to hop on that train. And they're like, okay, what is Adidas's biggest partnership? What is Adidas's biggest differentiator right now? And I
Right.
think part of their Adidas's biggest differentiator over the last 50, 60, 70 years has been the Adidas
It's
national
been
team.
German football
It's
because they're
been
a
the
German
DFB.
based company.
Exactly, right? They
Yeah.
have that national pride behind
Identity.
it,
Yeah. Right.
right? And Nike went, well, okay, how can we attack that? How can we get some buyback from what
Right.
Adidas is doing to grow? Because right
From a
now, if you
competitive
were to look
standpoint.
in the soccer world, Adidas is dominating the market. They have brought back the Adidas Predator. They are releasing innovative partnerships. They just did one with Ajax last week where they're doing a cycling thing. If you know anything about Amsterdam, there are more bikes than people per capita,
That's crazy.
right? So they
Wow.
just released a cycling thing. They have the Adidas Velo Samba. It works perfectly in partnership with that. Adidas, the work Adidas is doing right now in 2024 is industry defining, right? So
Right.
Nike is going and saying, well, here is something where we need to get some buy-in and we need to get some industry buy-in back and we need to defeat Adidas. And this is exactly where we can do it and how we can do it, right? And yes, they're going to produce a really great product for the DFB. Yes, they're going to invest in the DFB and invest in the nation's growth for sport. And yes, Nike is going to grow the value of their company in German culture, which is going to be super interesting to see. But it is a thing that Nike went to Adidas and said, here's a deal you can't refuse. We're going to give you $100 million. We're going to invest in your infrastructure and we're going to help you grow. Because as the article said, right, the DFB operated in negative last year after the really poor 2022 World Cup performance. Now going into 2024 Euros, hopefully they do better. But they operated from a negative. They had to take a loss, right?
So
Because
back to my earlier question, you think it was the money
I
versus
absolutely
the quality?
I absolutely think that Nike went and they gave the DFB a deal they cannot refuse in an attempt to get in some industry buyback off of Adidas, who right now is dominating the
And it worked.
sports and football world. And I think, yes, it did work, and yes, it will work.
That'll be
But
interesting to see how, like, moving forward, how Nike handles the relationship with German football, because Adidas was such a part of the identity. I wonder how Nike tries to present itself in their culture. You know what I mean? And
absolutely,
how that transition looks, I guess, because it's more than just a logo. You know what I mean?
yes.
To a lot of people. I I don't I'm not going to pretend to know anything about like being a German national or anything, but I would assume if your country's biggest sport, their team has a logo with a company that's based in your country, you would identify highly with that company, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and not having that anymore, I wonder what the relationship change is going to be like between the German consumer and the German football clubs. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that relationship develops and if there's any consumer blowback, you know what I mean?
Mm,
Or if they are like, okay, the jerseys are Nike now, whatever, like I'm still going to buy it. So
yeah.
um, I think that'll be interesting to see how that develops. I wonder how deep rooted that relationship is, or how loyal they are versus just saying I'm loyal to the team versus the brand.
Right, absolutely. And that is definitely an interesting dynamic. And I think the major thing is we have to wait and see. 2027 is still 3 years away, right? So we have some time there. And I think the
Right.
sales of the last Adidas DFB jersey will be some of the biggest sales we see in the next, probably of all time for a jersey. And then I think the Nike one will have a lot to follow, and it will it will make a statement. And I really believe that if Nike invests in this in the right way, it can be something super special and unique, and can be something that they can start to build an industry buy-in back. But they, again, the sports business world, the sports advertising, the sports marketing, the sports jersey, clothing world, etc., is bigger than ever. It's super competitive, and really, it's a growing, really unique industry. The biggest thing about the German consumer, because I know you were talking about that there, is the payback into what in terms of German clubs. I don't think is going to be. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference just because German clubs all have their individual partnerships, right? Like Bayern Munich is partnered with Adidas, for example. We might see Nike get a couple more of these teams based on them being part of the DFB, but that's really a loose. I don't think it'll have a huge impact on those teams that are really big in Germany, like a Borussia Dortmund, who has classically been sponsored with Puma, or Bayern Munich, who's with Adidas. So we'll see where that goes. But the biggest thing is the German consumer based in the German football consumer, right, is based on community. They have the 50+1 rule. It is what they believe in. It is who they believe in. And they are a huge piece about investing in community and culture and the clubs being supported and owned, not by the fans, not by conglomerates or organizations or stuff like this. So Nike contributing to that and buying into that and really buying into that culture in a way that I think Adidas has done really well in 2024, and especially look at the Ajax partnership I just talked about and how it's looking at the city's culture, looking at the people who are fans of the club and what they need and what they use. And I think if Nike is able to go and do that and do serious strategies with DFB fans and German football fans, the impact on in terms of that nation and Nike's sporting product will be huge, and really is unknown. So it is an unknown thing to be touched. But for anything, and I think overall, and I'll conclude with this, right? When you look at sports and their growth, and you're looking to grow in a community, and if you want to create buy-in from a community, you need to identify what they care about, what matters, and as a sporting fan or as a sporting organization or even as a business, go and say, that is what I'm going to market to. That is who I'm going to market to, and I'm going to invest in those things, right? So if I go and let's say I go to New York. I think New York has a lot of people who like commute and walk every day, right? There's a lot of run clubs. There are all these things. I'm gonna start a club in New York. I'm gonna work with Gotham FC, who's like New York, New Jersey for the NWSL, right? I would say, well, I kind of want a supporters run club, right? I think that's a huge thing in New York. There's tons of people. Everybody commutes. Everybody's walking everywhere every day. People are busy. They want something that they can do and get together with people that's going to accomplish multiple goals. They're multitaskers. I think that would be really successful. Simple analysis,
That's a
but
great idea.
how do you create growth in that unique way? And hopefully Nike is able to go and say, well, here's what the DFB fan cares about. Here's what they are interested in. Here's what they are invested in, and can really attack that. And that's where they'll find their growth. But it'll be super interesting to see their success. And I am super excited for it. Although I am a little bit sad to see Adidas and the DFB not be partnered for 7 years. And although the partnership may come back in after 2034, right? It may have just been the DFB
who knows?
to give Adidas a wake up call.
Yeah, definitely some insightful thoughts there about how to integrate your product into a culture for sure. And doing those things like having you were talking about the marketing strategies, having a fans first type of mentality where you're trying to identify what is inside of the mind of the fan and how can we not only cater to that, but also make our product the best it can be for that specific idea of what the fan wants. I think it's really interesting, and I'm just going to give a quick shout out because I'm about to start listening to Jesse Cole, the owner of the Savannah Bananas, has an audiobook called Fans First, and that's what you were just talking about. I'm going to start listening to it, but what you were just talking about reminded me of their whole mentality of we need to cater our product to our fans, and that's how we're going to be the most successful. And I think if a lot of teams adopt that, I think that is kind of the best strategy to be successful because the more people that are happy with your product, the better your sales are going to do. And the more sponsors you're going to get and the more TV deals you're going to get. And it's a cycle, right? You look at the Savannah Bananas growth in the last 5 years, it's insane, right? They started out playing in their own park that sat like less than 5,000 people, and now they're playing in 6 MLB stadiums this year, right? So you see that type of a model work, and I think if Nike adopts that type of a model, a fans first model, and caters their integration of German football with their product, I think if they adopt that mentality, they will be very successful. So I thought that was very interesting that you talked about the marketing strategies there because that's what it reminded me of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right, right? When we look at, and if you're talking about organizations who people should look at if they want to work in sports, Savannah Bananas are number one, right? Absolutely huge. The sports is really an entertainment industry. It's about can you connect with those people and can you build something unique? And that's exactly what they've done.
Spoiler alert, right? I want to do an internship with them at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
That would be so cool.
More than an internship, buddy. More than an internship.
Yeah. at minimum, it would be so cool to just not only travel cross country with them, but I saw firsthand the impact they have on people when they came to Havelock last year, and it's more than any other sport that I can describe. They touch people in a way, they impact people in a way that's just so different from everybody else. And I think having that fans first mentality, not only for any sports team, but for any sports company, like we were just talking about sports apparel, that's what this whole conversation is about. If sports apparel can have that mind of what do our consumers really want and try to get inside their minds like that, I think that will lead to the best success. And that's why you see so many teams and so many sports related companies have these huge marketing departments now, is because it is maybe the most important part of your business.
Absolutely. Well said.
I want to ask you one more thing.
Yes.
Do you think it would, I haven't made the episode graphic yet. Do you think for the episode graphic, I could take a German national football player and take one of their jerseys and just Photoshop a Nike logo on it instead of an Adidas logo, or do you think that would get me in trouble? I have no idea. So
I think
I'm
that
trying to
would
think
be
of
funny,
ideas.
but I would take that DFB player, put them in the Adidas jersey, and then I would go and I would take a transition to the Nike jersey mock-ups that I've seen. And there's a couple Nike jersey mock-ups that are out there based on their
Okay.
partnership announcement. And I think that would be a
Yeah.
better. I think that would look better prospectively.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I could use those types of images. I can only use like certain images.
Yeah.
For doing the Photoshop graphics that we end up having for each episode. It's actually super interesting. I've learned a lot about like licensing rights.
Mm.
And when we did our last episode about Shohei Otani, I
Yep.
searched up like Shohei and Ippei, and there was only one picture that's under what's called a Creative Commons license, which means you don't make any money off of using the image, which we're
Mm.
not because we don't have any sponsors. This isn't a business, but that's what I've had to use is Creative Commons images, and there was only one picture of the two of them that I could use.
It's nuts.
Yeah, right. So it's definitely been interesting, like to create the episode graphics. I have to really be creative about how I use certain pictures or what types of images I'm using. So yeah, I guess that was one idea I had for this, but I don't know whether I'd be able to find any usable stuff. So
And even
I'll
then,
have to work on it
possibly
after.
you could just go the DFB logo, the Adidas logo, and the Nike logo, and find some mashup that you like.
Ooh, I actually okay. I kind of like
It's
that
like
better
really calm, cool, and clean.
in almost like a transition, like a transitional,
Yeah,
like effect or
like
something. Okay,
you had like the Adidas background,
yep,
transition to a Nike, and then you had the DFB logo on top.
I
It's
kind
like
of
it's
like that.
black and white, and it's just
Yep,
plain and clean.
okay, yep, okay.
I love me a little black and white.
I'll go with something like that. Okay,
Love it.
thank you, because I was struggling to come up with the idea this morning for an episode graphic.
I'm here for the
Um,
creative mind.
yeah, I mean we both done some sports creative work, so
Oh yeah,
hopefully,
too
yeah,
much.
hopefully,
Too much free labor,
not
Paul.
not enough for me yet. So we'll see. I'm gonna keep going back for more,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
let's
Don't worry.
let's switch to our second topic of the day. We have the NCAA is moving to ban prop bets. Um, so this is really interesting and not something honestly that I expected at all because we've talked a lot about in recent months how the NCAA is making new ways to find revenue, right? They're creating new revenue avenues. And I know that's a tongue twister, but um, this is something where if they found, let's say, sponsors in the um, sports betting area, they could make a lot of money off of it. But again, it's not ethical to do that from an amateurism or even a professional standpoint. So I think they're trying to maintain basically some integrity around their sports, and that's what is. This whole decision is, or this whole movement is based around. So for anybody who doesn't know what a prop bet is, a prop bet, proposition bet, is a type of side wager on parts of a game or event that may have nothing to do with the final score of the game. So examples would be like the first player to get a touchdown or a total number of bases for a single MLB player. These can be combined into parlays, which allow the bettor to win more money than just a single bet. So basically, the head of the NCAA, Charlie Baker, former Massachusetts governor, by the way, um, he wants to ban prop bets on college sports in states with legal sports betting. First thoughts about that before we get into any of the quotes, because we have several of them. But I want to know, like, what do you think about this whole idea of, do you think this will help them maintain the integrity of college sports, or like, do you think it's a smart decision? What do you think?
I don't totally get it. For me as a viewer and for me as somebody who's in sports business, sports betting is a huge industry, and it's a huge industry because it gives people another reason to watch the game. And in addition, prop bets are just something like fun. I can kind of see why, and we'll go into it in a bit. And I put something linked to Ivan Toney, and I'll talk about Ivan Toney a little bit and and him and that impact of, right, this is something that's both available to viewers and athletes, and it's really hard to restrict and control. And I would see why the NCAA doesn't want it involved in their sport, because obviously it's an amateurism model, and people
For
betting on,
now.
right, people for now, right, and people betting on something that is considered amateurism seems and comes across as inappropriate.
Super
But
unethical.
right, exactly. But also, when you talk about college athletes, and even when you talk about college kids, they're talking about sports bets all the time. They absolutely love it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
that's
NCAA, if you look at their audience, I really don't understand why they would want to ban something their audience enjoys so much.
yeah. What you said about college kids betting a lot. I didn't know how much until I read that the NCAA conducted a survey after I believe it was the 2022 March Madness tournament, or maybe it was 2023. I think it was 2022. But it found that 58% of 18 to 22-year-olds are gambling. That's according to ESPN. But
It's huge.
that's 60% of people our age are gambling, and many of those are sports gamblers. So, like you said, it is a big industry, particularly with the NCAA's audience. So, from a financial standpoint, are you trying to take advantage of that? Probably, if you want to make yourself more money. And I was just thinking, if you did get partners in the sports betting industry and if you made that more of your culture, does that give you the money to start affording to be able to pay college athletes? That's possible.
That's a hot take, Paul. I like it.
Right. That is a
I
hot
get the
take
fire meter going.
because it's a hot take because it's not ethical to do that.
Mm.
Because you run into all sorts of conflicting issues, right? If college athletes have partners that are sports bettors, they could be influenced to set lines or take certain actions, throw games, et cetera, right? And that changes the entire landscape of college sports outcomes and the ethics around what makes fair play in college athletics. And that's something that I don't think the NCAA wants to disrupt. So, because they don't want to have a bad reputation, they don't want to be seen as unethical, and they've always been, as of right now, a student athlete first model, and it's been about the education, and that's what's been supposed to be first. Um, yeah, yeah, big air quotes on that one, but I don't think they can take that image and then say we're gonna include sports betting into our culture and be able to justify both sides of that. You know what I mean? So I think that they're doing this to try to maintain the integrity of their sports. And based on the quotes that Charlie Baker had, that's what it seems like.
Yeah. And I do totally see it, and I understand why. Because the integrity of their sport is super important. The integrity of, for example, college basketball and college sport overall is super important. That's what the NCAA cares about and has cared about. But the issue comes to me for all of this is like, well, do your viewers care about the integrity? Have your viewers cared about the
Wow.
integrity? Your viewers care about the entertainment factor of the sport. They love, and one thing that I pointed out when I was watching it last night rather, I was watching the UConn Iowa game. There's less ads. It's more entertaining. There's more game going on, right? And I left that
I'm going to
game,
argue that they would care
and it's possible that they do. But I sit there and I
if
say,
games start getting thrown
now,
because of athletes being involved in betting scandals.
yes. But in addition to that, this is where, if we were to say the NCAA is going to support gambling, and this is me not saying that I do that. This is me arguing counter thesis, right? NCAA supports gambling. We have gambling sponsors, right? Give me a gambling website, for example.
DraftKings.
Right? DraftKings sponsors the NCAA. Well, now we're going to build resources for gambling addictive help, because people who are 18 to 24 get addicted to gambling and are addicted, and it is addictive, right? So we have those resources established and propped and supported by NCAA and partner schools that support students that aren't just student athletes, right? Something the NCAA has never been able to do and influence. We then also have programs to support, okay, here's how to bet safely and effectively, all right? We have programs to support, can we better observe betting on our fixtures in our games to make sure players aren't involved and players aren't influenced? How can we control it, right? So if they were, rather than just eliminating it, we know, and as we just talked about, right, their population of viewer is so passionate about sports betting that it's crazy, right? It is addictive, okay? Rather than eliminating it from your sport, which might hurt the viewer and hurt those that are watching your game, how can you better help your viewer establish a healthy relationship with their thing that also supports your business? And I
Yeah,
think
that's a
if
good
they were to
spin on
partner with
it.
DraftKings, and again, this is a counter thesis spin, that's something that they could do and build into in a really unique way.
Yeah,
And
that's
maybe
definitely a
we
good
see
spin
better
on it.
results from it.
I don't know if they, like you said, they would have to keep it under control. I don't trust that it could be a situation that could be kept under control. I think eventually somebody or multiple somebodies would take advantage of it and it would get out of control, where the betting would turn into scandals, where games would get thrown. And it's just not something that would be not only good for the fair play of the sport in general, but also for the success of the league, because nobody is going to want to watch a game that they already know the outcome of, because they
Mm.
know that somebody could be throwing it based on the betting lines, right? So I think that would not only impact the ethical side of it, but I also think that it would impact the business, because I think viewers now are smart enough to understand when somebody could be throwing a game. There have been
Mm.
enough betting scandals that we recognize, at least anybody who follows sports closely would recognize a star player who's throwing a game, right? You could understand the difference in performance of what somebody was capable of and is now doing. And everybody has bad games, but I think there would be too much incentive from outside parties, like not DraftKings, but let's say bookies, right? Bookies, illegal sports bets or illegal sports books, right? That would go to these athletes and say, the lines are this, the betting lines are this on this website. I want you to do this, and I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to do it. And
Yeah.
I think there's just too much opportunity to take advantage of that if the NCAA ever did include sports betting into their culture.
Mm. And the concern is definitely there, right? And it's a concern of fear, though. It's fear of this is going to taint our product, right? And I guess that fear is there and is valid. But how many times have we seen a NCAA college athlete have a betting scandal? Because
Several.
I
They're
haven't seen
they're
data. I haven't seen the data which says it is occurring frequently, where it's something that's of
I don't
massive.
know. I don't know how much about recently, but I did watch a documentary about college basketball in the 90s where it was a problem. Like there were
Yeah,
several scandals. So I just
which
don't
is,
want to go back to a world where that's commonplace, I guess.
and I agree. I agree. We don't want that to be commonplace. But I also think that I don't see the prop bets being something where athletes are going to randomly throw a moment for a prop bet that their friends betting on when it actually genuinely puts risk onto their NCAA eligibility and their ability to
Right.
play and declare for the draft, right?
Yeah.
Like when you, especially when you create incentive packages where athletes are making millions from NIL, I don't see this prop bet thing, and I respect President Baker a ton. I don't see this prop bet thing being something that should be of massive concern. Because if an
Yeah.
athlete is prioritizing possibly $100,000 prop bet that they're going to get paid for over their NCAA eligibility and their ability to play the sport they love and NIL money and scholarship and team and playing bonuses that you get from the schools,
Yeah,
I don't think
I get
you
where
should
you're
protect
coming
the
from.
athlete in the first place. And I don't think
Yeah,
we're so
I
I
get
get the
where you're coming
concern,
from.
but I think the benefits package to the athletes are so large that I don't see this betting scandal becoming an issue. And
Yeah.
I know we have had that issue in the past, but we also haven't had that issue in what 34 years now since the 90s, 20 years now,
Yeah, I
right? So
honestly
it's
I
something for
don't
us
know
to
the history of
further
like the
develop.
betting in college basketball. We could find some kind of guest that could educate us on that.
Oh
But
yeah, absolutely. I'm
um
sure.
but yeah, I don't know. I just the possibilities there would be um too concerning for me. And I
Mm,
think part of the NCAA's concern, you mentioned something about an athlete choosing to throw a game because of their friend having a prop bet, right? I think part of the reason the NCAA is doing this is because of the social pressure and the social availability of athletes to the world now.
mm,
And that's what I got from a lot of Charlie Baker's quotes. The NCAA is drawing the line on sports betting to protect student athletes and protect the integrity of the game. Issues across the country these last several days show that there's more work to be done.
mm.
Um, 38 states have legal sports betting, so it is widespread. And Charlie Baker also said, sports betting issues are on the rise across country, with prop bets continuing to threaten the integrity and competition and leading to student athletes and professional athletes getting harassed. So that getting harassed part is really the most important thing to me, is because athletes are so available on social media now, anybody can DM anybody, right? And they can get like hundreds of DMs. You didn't hit my prop bet, or you should have done this, you should have done that because I lost a ton of money on you or something. You know what I mean? There is a lot more availability for them to have social pressure to influence the outcomes of games, for them to, let's say, shoot differently, right? If they can, at that level, they can control if they make a basket or not. So let's say somebody DMs them and is like, I'll give you $1,000,000 if you hit less than 5 threes tonight. And they were like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. That's not ethical. And that's where the concern is that there's too much availability with them being on social media and being such public figures now, because we do live in the media age, that they can be taken advantage of and they can be swayed too easily because of the amount of public pressure they're under. And they're so really it's a move to try to protect the athletes. What do you
Correct,
think about that?
and you're right. That is the major concern. And I think the problem is social pressure is that exists. And if you're trying to protect an amateurism model where you want your student athletes to be safe, protected, and be considered people rather than a product, I think that's something that you could focus on. And you're absolutely right. But the problem is we've talked about it all year, and this is me again arguing counter thesis because I know it's not that I disagree. It's that the NCAA is pushing towards a professionalism model to some extent. And if they're pushing towards a professionalism model in some ways that we've talked about, right, why would they eliminate sports betting? Well, these student athletes are playing at the highest level of the game. That pressure should be expected. I work with the USL2 club. Our USL2 club, ACC, we get DMs and comments on our game time posts saying that we fail people's prop bets. There's like 5 people, but we have, right, that's in
Yeah,
the
so you
USL.
have some
That's
experience
not
with
even
that
professional.
yourself
That's
then.
pre-professional, right?
Yeah,
So it's horrible that people do that. But also, these are people who are planning and expecting to be at the highest level of sport to some extent, right?
true.
These are student athletes who want to go play in the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, etc. If they want to do that, that's something they're going to experience at that level too. And I understand, yes, these are kids. And yes, these are college students and athletes, and we do need to protect them. And we do need to do this and that and this and that. And we do need to change the social expectation of, well, you failed my prop bet, I'm going to DM you because I'm mad at you. No, that's not what a prop bet is about, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's something that they could offer in the controls, not offer in the controls, but like better educate people who are betting about, right? That's not appropriate of you to do, for example. But I will say the point they're making is valid. It makes sense. You want to protect your athletes, but if they're progressing towards professionalism model where you're paying your athletes, well, here's something where you are actually identifying your athletes as a product as well as people, and you really need to be able to optimize your product. And sports betting is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
So I think the NCAA would be losing out on a huge part of their viewership, on a huge part of the passion behind it, and it makes it less interesting for some viewers. Um, Although it's still the sports we love, I think it does change something massively about the NCAA, and about American sports in general. Because I think American sports are hugely influenced by sports betting. In addition to the
Yeah.
fact, and this is kind of a random off topic bit, if it's sports betting anyway, even if we made it illegal for NCAA to do it, there would still be illegal sports betting, and they'd still get these DMs because bookies are like, well, I'm illegal anyways. Whatever you say doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I think the quantity of it would be much less.
Correct. The quantity would be much less, but it's not going to stop it as a whole. Yes, the quantity would be much less. Correct.
But like, this is one of those issues, or like sports betting. If you're talking about it as an issue, which I'm not sure that I can even qualify it as an issue, it depends on your point of view. But if you qualify it as an issue, then it's one of those things that can't be tackled by one singular action. There's too many people that do it, and the companies that control the sports betting lines are too powerful to take one singular action, unless you're talking from like a U.S. government standpoint. Outside of that, you're not gonna stop sports betting completely. So I do agree with you on that, but I also kind of agree like that they do need to protect the athletes in some way, because it can be very hard to resist that influence, that social influence that they get, not just on social media, but even on campus, right? A lot of these kids are going to schools that have 30,000 plus kids, and there's a lot of social influence that comes along with that. So if they hit the prop bets, they're heroes. If they don't, then the ramifications are hard to deal with, in terms of like an emotional and social standpoint. So I kind of wouldn't mind seeing the NCAA ban prop bets, because it would take the focus off of the individual player and put the focus onto which team is going to win the game. If from a sports betting perspective, then the only sports bets that would be allowed would be the outcome of the game, which I think is a much better place to have your sports betting culture in than on the individual, because that it puts too much risk on the individual, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and you're correct there. It does put a ton of risk on individual players because when they fail, or when they don't accomplish what somebody wants you to accomplish, maybe that person gets mad. But I really think, and I think you're right. Like shifting it and shifting away, because it's not eliminating sports betting as a whole, right? But shifting it a little bit is important, because it is a massive problem, and we have identified that throughout this segment. But just thinking about it as a whole, I would if we are to eliminate prop bets, I also want to see the NCAA invest in sports betting as a whole and see them develop programs that are going to help students better understand what they're doing, because they are a sporting product.
Yeah, I did like how you talked about having resources for students to better educate themselves about the addiction of gambling and all of that. I think if they did integrate betting more into their culture, if they embrace the prop bets, then they would need to do that. Not even just from an optics standpoint, but to make sure that their consumers are healthy consumers, and that they will keep coming back to be consumers, consumer retention. So, yeah, I think they would need to provide those resources if they did embrace it. But if they're not going to do that, if they're not going to invest in that, then they should ban it. I think we've kind of established all the points of view on the topic for now. We'll have to see what happens if the NCAA does vote to ban it or not. We'll keep you guys updated on that. But I think that's a very interesting part, sports betting, of how college sports operates. And I don't think it's one that's talked about very often. So I like that they're talking about it now.
Agreed.
So we'll have to see where that conversation goes. So I will let you know my computer is at 17%, and I don't have a place to plug in at the moment, because if I unplug my microphone, I won't be able to talk into the microphone anymore, and there's only one outlet next to me. So do you want to, knowing that, do you want to do sports quotes of the week, knowing that my computer could die in the middle of the
Yeah,
segment,
we'll
or do
make
you
it.
want to
We'll make it a
scrap it?
quick. We'll make it a quick sports quote of the week because I like
Okay.
the quotes I have. But we'll make
Okay.
it. We won't go super deep into it.
I don't need to do mine then. Let's just do yours.
Okay. Okay.
Because I want to make sure it saves too.
I got you. Um, Sports quotes of the week. Vamo. All right. So my sports coach of the week comes from Mauricio Pochettino, who's the Chelsea coach right now. If you haven't been following kind of Chelsea's mission and journey the last couple of years, they did really well, won the Champions League, and were bought out after the Russian oligarch owner was forced to sell due to the Russian-Ukraine invasion, and have been absolutely in the gutters. Okay, but this past week they played a really entertaining game against Man United, where they won 4-3 off of a goal in the 110th and 111th minute, both from Cole Palmer finishing his hat trick. So just a super interesting game. But I wanted to take some quotes from Mauricio Pochettino, which I think communicate some really great messages about coaching and passion and really how you want to influence a group. Mauricio had this to say: passion is not to be a crazy guy doing stupid things on the touchline. I'm not like this. The team needs to show passion when it's 11 players on the pitch, running and desperate to get the ball back and score goals. I need to be calm, very clinical and analytical to help them in every aspect of the game. At the end of the game, of course, show your passion like I did, but it's not a circus where you need a clown to do something on the touchline. He then follows that by saying, we are one of the youngest teams in Europe, so we, the coaching staff, need to be calm. I'm not a clown, I'm a coach. If someone wants a clown, go and find a clown. Addressing the Chelsea fans who felt that he wasn't passionate enough on the sideline in some moments.
That's
But
funny.
really,
I like that. I like that quote just because I think it establishes what the role of a coach is in general, right? It's to be a positive influence. It's not to be an influence where there are outbursts all the time or where it has a negative effect on the club's PR, right? On the club's image. So I think that establishes the role of a coach very well. And I think I would assume you've adopted like a similar philosophy in your coaching.
a little
Yeah.
bit, yeah. I won't go super deep into my coaching, but philosophically, right, it's about supporting people and offering what those people need in those moments. And what Pochettino was pointing out here is that identify what the team you're in is like, who you are surrounded by, and what those people need. Sometimes for me, I work with student athletes and I work with athletes who need that momentum. They need that driver. They need that energy. They need that passion that I can bring in every moment on the sideline, sometimes looking like a crazy man because they need to be lifted up and need to be energized, right? Sometimes you work with kids who have that energy, who have that drive. And really, my job is to be gentle, be calm with them, relax them, and harness them. But for you as a sports
Yeah.
professional, and I know we work with, I'm sure we have a lot of student athletes who listen to this because both of us were and are student athletes. Um, as a team, identify who you're working with, either on the field or off the field. Identify what you're working with in your sports business. Who are the people? Who are the personalities? And what are those personalities? What do those personalities need for you to help them grow? Right now,
Yeah.
I'm building an internship program for AC Connecticut. I hopped on a call with a guy who goes to the University of Tampa. I won't drop any names, but good kid. I'm excited to work with him, but definitely very meager, very calm. He's coming out of his freshman year, doesn't have a total idea of what his why is, where he wants to go. For me, right, I'm going out identifying, okay, his energy is different. It's relaxed, it's calm, it's timid. How can I go and motivate him to raise his energy, to bring him into an environment where he's going to be able to perform in a really high energy way, right? So for me, looking to be a manager, right, that's exactly what I take away from this Pochettino quote. What does the team you're working with need in that moment, in that time?
Yeah, and that just doesn't apply to sports. That applies to all business, right? You can say that of any manager. How are you going to get the best out of your team, and how can you individualize what each person on your team needs out of
Mm,
you? Um, I think that's the best way to go about being a manager or being a coach. So I really like that type of philosophy, that type of strategy.
thank
So
you. Agreed.
so if that's all of the thoughts you had on that, I think I'm gonna say we should cut this off before it gets cut off for me. Um, so go follow us on social media. I think we've been putting out some good stuff. I know it's been a while since our last recording. We're doing the best we can with scheduling and stuff. We are still have other things that are going on in our lives, so we're doing the best we can. I wish we could do this just like full time. That would be awesome. But we both have a lot of
Okay.
other things. We'll see.
On
Yeah,
the horizon.
after college maybe. But go follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. You look up SBT _ podcast on Instagram, SBT.pod23 on Twitter or on TikTok, and SBT _ pod23 on Twitter. You can see we've been putting out some good stuff. I need to do more quirky types of stuff, like content that relates to things outside of just our episodes. Like I made a Easter TikTok the other day. I thought that was
I
kind of
did
funny.
see that. I showed that to my parents. I loved it. Quirky thought. We should do a
Yeah.
podcast at one of my games.
That you're coaching?
Yes.
Could you handle that?
Not a full pod. We could do a quirky bit of where I'm coaching. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, yeah, a segment.
On the
yeah.
sideline. Maybe a podcast game. That would be sick. Get some
like a live show type of thing.
That would be fire.
I'd be down to do a live show. That would be awesome. I don't know how many people would show up, but I think that would be good to put out there.
You never know.
You never know. So
Ask
we definitely could do that.
The best part of having Zach as a coach, and I guarantee you all of their answers is he's just a crazy, quirky guy.
Yeah, well, we'll get to see your coaching in your day in the life segment whenever we figure out timing for that one. So
absolutely,
you guys,
it's hard to record while I'm working.
No, I get it. I get it. Yeah. So you all have that to look forward to, listeners. So we'll see you soon, I guess.